Ambassador Kira Vasquez had worked in alien politics for 11 years. She had learned many things during that time. She knew how to read the changing colors on Valorian's skin. She understood the musical sounds hidden in Chitauri speech. She had learned never to accept a drink from a Morvathi delegate because their idea of refreshment could kill a human in seconds. But the most important thing Kira had learned was to trust her gut feelings. And right now, her gut was screaming that something was very wrong. The council chambers on Station Meridian were too quiet. Normally, the massive circular room buzzed with activity at all hours. Delegates from 100 different species would gather in small groups, trading secrets and making deals. The air would fill with clicks, whistles, growls, and the constant hum of translator devices working overtime today. The chamber felt like a ghost town. Kira walked slowly through the empty space, her footsteps echoing off the high ceiling. Where was everyone? The Arcelian trade minister, creature who looked like a walking insect covered in golden armor, had not missed a single council session in 40 years. His seat stood empty. The Valorian delegation, usually a crowd of tall, blue-skinned beings arguing loudly about everything, had vanished completely. She stopped a passing service drone and asked about the missing delegates. The machine's response was programmed and unhelpful. She approached a junior Morvathi clerk and received only nervous silence and eyes that refused to meet hers. Something was happening. Something big. And humans were not supposed to know about it. Kira returned to her quarters and called her aide, Lieutenant David Chen. He was young, brilliant with computers, and loyal to a fault. Within an hour, he had spread his equipment across her dining table and was diving deep into the station's communication networks. What they found made Kira's blood run cold. Encrypted messages were flying across the galaxy. Thousands of them. They bounced through relay stations in 7 different systems before reaching their final destination. Someone had gone to enormous trouble to hide where these messages were going, but Chen was very good at his job. It took him 3 hours to crack the first layer of security. When the decoded text appeared on his screen, both humans stared at it in silence. It was an invitation. A summons to a gathering at coordinates deep in the Dark Reach Nebula. The message called for representatives from every species in the Galactic Council to attend an emergency meeting. The subject was listed simply as the human question. Every species had received this invitation. Every species except humanity. Chen looked up at Kira, his face pale in the blue light of his screens. They're meeting without us. All of them. The entire galaxy. Kira read the message again, hoping she had somehow misunderstood. She had not. The words were clear. The meaning was clear. After 300 years of membership in the galactic community, humanity was being shut out of a meeting specifically about humanity. Her mind raced through possibilities. Were they planning to celebrate human achievements? That seemed unlikely given all the secrecy. Were they organizing some kind of surprise? The Dark Reach Nebula was a strange place for a party. The region was notorious for unstable gravity wells and radiation storms. Most species considered it too dangerous for any kind of permanent settlement. No, this was something else. Something that required hiding. In Kira's experience, secrets were rarely kept to protect the people being kept in the dark. Usually, secrets protected the people keeping them. Usually, secrets meant someone was planning something that would not survive the light of day. She made her decision in the space of a heartbeat. I need a ship, she told Chen. Something small and fast. Something with stealth capabilities. And I need you to disable its transponder so no one can track where I'm going. Chen's eyes went wide. Ambassador, that's completely illegal. If the Council finds out you've stolen a vessel and violated restricted space, they'll arrest you. They might arrest all of us. They might use it as an excuse to sanction Earth. If the Council is secretly meeting to discuss the human question without any humans present, we have bigger problems than a stolen ship. Kira was already packing a bag with emergency supplies. I need to know what they're planning. We all need to know. At least let me come with you. No, Kira's voice was firm. I need you here. Monitoring communications. If I don't come back, someone has to tell Earth what we've discovered. Someone has to warn them. Chen wanted to argue. She could see it in his face. But he was a good soldier, and he understood orders. 2 hours later, Kira was strapped into the pilot's seat of a small courier vessel. The ship was built for speed rather than comfort. Its cockpit barely had room for one person. Its engines hummed with barely contained power, ready to push the craft to velocities that would turn most larger ships into scrap metal. Chen had done his work well. The transponder was dead. The ship's registration codes had been scrambled. To any observer, she would appear as nothing more than background noise in the vast emptiness of space. Kira entered the coordinates for the Dark Reach nebula and engaged the faster-than-light drive. Stars stretched into lines around her. The universe blurred and twisted. Then, with a stomach-turning lurch, she was elsewhere. The nebula filled her viewport with swirling clouds of purple and gold. Beautiful and deadly. Ships that entered without proper navigation often never emerged. The radiation alone could cook an unshielded crew in hours. But Kira was not interested in the nebula's dangers. She was interested in the signal her sensors had just detected. A signal that should not exist in this supposedly empty region of space. There was a station here, hidden among the clouds. Its running lights were dimmed almost to invisibility, but they could not hide from her ship's advanced sensors, and it was not alone. Kira counted the ships docked around the structure. 10, 20, 50. She lost track at 200. Vessels of every shape and size, representing every major civilization in the known galaxy. Arcelian battlecruisers, Valorian diplomatic yachts, Morvathi transport ships, Chitauri living vessels that were more creature than machine. All of them were here. All of them hiding in the darkness, all of them meeting to decide humanity's fate. Kira took a deep breath and began scanning for a way inside. She was not invited to this gathering, but she was going to attend anyway. Humanity deserved to know what their supposed allies were planning, and Kira Vasquez was going to find out, no matter what it cost her. Getting inside the hidden station was the hardest thing Kira had ever done. The structure had been built to keep people out. Security drones patrolled every approach vector. Sensors swept the surrounding space in overlapping patterns that left almost no blind spots. The docking bays were sealed tight, with armed guards visible through the transparent barriers. But Kira had not survived 11 years of alien politics. By giving up when things got difficult, she found her opening in the station's maintenance systems. A small hatch on the lower levels, designed for repair drones to enter and exit. The security around it was lighter than the main entrances. Perhaps the builders had assumed no one would be crazy enough to try squeezing through a passage meant for machines. They had never met a determined human. Kira maneuvered her ship as close as she dared, then suited up in her emergency vacuum gear. The jump from her airlock to the maintenance hatch took less than 10 seconds, but those seconds stretched into eternity. If anyone was watching, if any sensor happened to sweep in her direction, she would be caught. No alarms sounded. No drones came racing toward her. She reached the hatch and used a tool from her belt to override its simple lock. Inside, she found herself in a narrow tunnel filled with cables and pipes. The air was thin but breathable. The gravity was set to Arzelian preferences, about 70% of Earth normal, which made movement easier but also made her feel slightly sick. She crawled forward, following the sound of distant voices translated through the station's communication system. The main assembly chamber had to be somewhere above her. She just needed to find a way to observe without being seen. 20 minutes of crawling through spaces, designed for beings half her size, left Kira bruised and exhausted. But finally, she found what she was looking for. A ventilation grate overlooking vast circular chamber. What she saw below made her forget her aching muscles. The assembly hall was enormous. Tiered seating rose up in spirals that reached toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Every seat was filled. Thousands of aliens of every shape and description sat in perfect silence, their attention focused on a raised platform at the chamber's center. On that platform stood High Chancellor Vorn of the Arzelian Dominion. Kira recognized him immediately. The Arcelians were among the oldest species in the galaxy. Their empire had already been ancient when humans were still learning to use fire. Vorn himself was over 400 years old. His golden carapace marked with the ceremonial scars of countless political victories. He was speaking now. His natural clicks and whistles transformed into smooth syllables by the hall's translation system. "The evidence is clear and cannot be denied," Vorn said. His compound eyes swept across the assembly. Humanity has exceeded all projected development curves. Their technological advancement continues to accelerate at rates our models cannot explain. Their population spreads across colony worlds faster than any species in recorded history. Murmurs rippled through the gathered aliens. Kira pressed herself against the grate, barely daring to breathe. "Consider the facts," Vorn continued. 300 years ago, humans were confined to a single planet. They had primitive chemical rockets. They had no knowledge of faster-than-light travel. They did not even know that other intelligent species existed in the universe. He activated a holographic display. A blue dot appeared, representing Earth. Then, as Kira watched, the display began to change. The blue dot multiplied. It spread outward. Colony after colony appeared, a tide of human expansion flowing across the star map. In 3 centuries, they have achieved what took the Valorians 12,000 years. What took my own people 8,000 years? What took the Chitauri over 15,000 years? Vorn's voice grew heavy. They adapt. They improvise. They refuse to accept limitations that every other species treats as fundamental laws of existence. A Chitauri delegate rose from the audience. The creature was beautiful in an alien way, its body covered in bioluminescent patches that flickered with emotion. "You speak as though this is a crime, High Chancellor." "The humans have been valuable partners. Their innovations have benefited all council members. Their medicine has cured diseases we thought untreatable. Their engineering has improved our ships, our stations, our very way of life." Vorn turned to face the Chitauri directly, and that is precisely the danger. The chamber fell silent. "At current rates of expansion," Vorn said slowly, "humanity will achieve technological and territorial parity with the eldest races within 200 years. Supremacy within 400, he let those words hang in the air. They are not merely rising, honored delegates. They are ascending at a pace that threatens the very balance of galactic civilization." Kira felt her heart pounding against her ribs. She had known humans were successful. She had known they were expanding fast. But hearing it stated so clearly, with such obvious fear in Vorn's voice, made her see her own species in a new light. The galaxy was afraid of humanity. "What do you propose?" called out a voice from the upper tiers. A Morvathi delegate, its purple skin glistening with nervous sweat. Vorn's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. "I propose nothing more than what any responsible civilization would do when faced with an emerging threat. I propose that we take steps to ensure the continued stability of our shared galaxy. I propose that we implement measures to guide human development along safer paths." The word hung unspoken in the air, but Kira heard it clearly in her mind. Containment. They wanted to contain humanity, to cage them, to hold them back while the rest of the galaxy decided what to do with them. "We are not discussing extermination," Vorn added, as if reading her thoughts. "We are not barbarians. Humanity is a young species with great potential. But that potential must be channeled, guided, controlled, for their sake as well as ours." The Chitauri delegate's lights flickered angrily. "You speak of controlling an entire species without their knowledge or consent. How is this different from what we condemn in tyrants and conquerors?" "It is different," Vorn replied calmly, "because we act not from malice, but from necessity. History teaches us what happens when a younger species rises too quickly. The precursor wars that nearly destroyed half the galaxy. The silence of the Outer Arm, where 100 civilizations vanished overnight. We have all read the records. We have all seen what remains of those who failed to act in time." He raised his armored arms in a gesture that encompassed the entire assembly. "I ask you, honored delegates, to consider the future. Not just for your own species, but for all of us. Humanity is not evil. They are not malicious. But they are dangerous in ways they themselves do not understand. And we have a responsibility to ensure that their rise does not become our fall." The chamber erupted in debate. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages. Translators struggled to keep up. But through the chaos, Kira could see the way the wind was blowing. Fear was winning. Fear of humanity's potential. Fear of change? Fear of being left behind in a galaxy where humans continued to advance at impossible speeds. Kira pulled out a small recording device and began capturing everything. Whatever happened next, humanity needed to know the truth. Their allies were not allies at all. They were jailers. Deciding how tight to make the cage, the debate continued for hours. Kira remained frozen in her hiding spot, her recording device capturing every terrible word. The Morvathi were the first to offer a concrete proposal. Their delegate, a large creature with too many arms and skin the color of old bruises, suggested economic warfare. Block human access to key trade routes. Cut them off from rare materials essential for advanced technology. Slowly starve their economy until expansion became impossible. It would take decades, the Morvathi admitted, but humans are impatient creatures. They would burn themselves out trying to solve problems that have no solutions. Their famous creativity would turn inward, becoming frustration, then anger, then collapse. The Valorians had a different idea. Their delegate, tall and graceful with skin like blue marble, proposed technological controls. Every piece of advanced equipment sold to humans would contain hidden limitations. Every scientific exchange would include carefully designed dead ends. Humanity would believe they were learning, but they would actually be running in circles. We control most of the teaching institutions they depend on, the Valorian explained. We can adjust their curriculum. Emphasize theoretical knowledge over practical application. Fill their brightest minds with elegant ideas that lead nowhere useful. Kira felt sick listening to this. She had studied at a Valorian academy. She had trusted her teachers. The idea that they might have been deliberately holding her back made her want to scream. But the worst proposal came from the Keth Collective. The Keth were mysterious even by galactic standards. They lived in vast hive ships that drifted through the darkness between stars. No one knew exactly what they looked like because they never left their vessels. They communicated only through mechanical translators that rendered their thoughts into cold, emotionless speech. Biological modification, the Keth translator announced. We propose the introduction of genetic sequences into human food supplies. These sequences would subtly reduce fertility rates over multiple generations. The effect would appear natural, a gradual decline that could be blamed on environmental factors or lifestyle choices. The chamber fell silent. Even among species willing to cage humanity, this suggestion crossed a line. You are proposing to poison them, the Chitauri delegate said, her bioluminescent patches burning with anger. To attack their very biology without their knowledge or consent. We are proposing to save them from themselves, the Keth replied without emotion. A slower-growing population would have time to mature, time to develop the wisdom that currently escapes them. We would be doing humanity a kindness. Kira's hands trembled as she recorded these words. She had to get this information back to Earth. She had to warn her people about what their supposed friends were planning. But before she could even begin to think about escape, High Chancellor Vorn raised his arms to restore order. We have heard many proposals, he said, some more extreme than others. But I believe we can find a middle path. A measured approach that addresses our concerns without resorting to methods that would shame us. He activated another holographic display. This one showed a detailed plan, broken down into phases and timelines. First, we redirect human expansion toward resource-poor regions. Let them colonize worlds that will drain their energy without providing meaningful returns. Second, we introduce challenges that consume their innovative capacity. Problems that seem solvable, but require decades of wasted effort. Third, we encourage cultural changes that promote satisfaction over ambition. Content humans are safe humans. Vorn turned to face the assembly directly. This is not about destroying humanity. This is about guiding them, shaping them into a species that can coexist peacefully with the established order. In 1,000 years, they will thank us for our wisdom. The Chitauri delegate rose again. They will never thank us for this. And if they discover what we have done, they will never forgive us. They will not discover anything, Vorn replied confidently. Our methods are subtle. Our coordination is perfect. Humanity will believe they are simply facing natural challenges. The ordinary difficulties of a young species finding its place in a complex galaxy. They will struggle, but they will survive. And eventually, they will settle into their proper role. A vote was called. Kira watched in horror as delegate after delegate signaled their support. The Valorians flashed approval with their facial colors. The Morvathi stamped their many feet in agreement. The Arcelians clicked their mandibles in the pattern that meant yes. Species after species. World after world. Civilization after civilization. All of them voting to chain humanity without it's ever telling them about the chains. The Chitauri abstained, their delegates sitting in angry silence. A handful of minor species joined them. But the outcome was never in doubt. The motion passed by an overwhelming margin. Humanity's fate had been decided by creatures who claimed to be there. Friends, Kira saved the final. Recording and began moving back toward the ventilation shaft. She had to get this evidence to Earth. She had to warn them. She had to give humanity a chance to fight back before the cage closed completely. She was halfway to her exit point when the lights found her bright beams stabbed through the darkness of the maintenance tunnel. Alarms began to wail. Heavy footsteps echoed from somewhere behind her. Do not move, human. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, amplified by the station's communication system. You are surrounded. Resistance will only make things worse. Kira kept moving anyway. She pulled herself through narrow passages, ignoring the pain as metal scraped against her skin. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of pursuit. Larger beings trying to follow her through spaces too. Small for them. She almost made it. The exit hatch was in sight when the stun beam hit her from behind. Every muscle in her body locked up at once. She fell forward, unable to catch herself, and crashed hard against the metal floor. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was a pair of Arzelian guards looming over her fallen body. Their compound eyes showed no mercy. Their armored hands reached down to grab her. She had failed. Humanity would never know. But as consciousness faded, Kira's fingers moved one last time. A tiny motion that no one noticed. A small data crystal, slipping free from her recorder and falling into a crack between two floor panels. The recording was still there, hidden in the darkness, waiting for someone to find it. Kira smiled as she passed out. She had not failed yet. Kira woke up in chains. The restraints were designed for creatures far stronger than humans. Thick bands of metal wrapped around her wrists, her ankles, her waist. She could barely move, barely breathe. The weight pressed down on her like a physical reminder of how small she was in this galaxy of giants. Guards stood on either side of her. Arcelian soldiers in ceremonial armor, their compound eyes watching her every tiny movement. Behind them, she could see the assembly chamber stretching out in all directions. Thousands of aliens stared down at her from their tiered seats. She was on the central platform, the same place where Vorn had stood to condemn her species. Now she stood there herself, a prisoner on display for the entire galaxy to see. High Chancellor Vorn approached her slowly. His golden carapace gleamed under the harsh lights. His mandibles clicked in a rhythm that might have been amusement. Ambassador Vasquez, he said. I should have known. Your species has a remarkable talent for appearing where you are not wanted. It is perhaps the very quality that has brought us all together today. Kira tested her chains. They did not give even slightly. You're making a mistake. We are ensuring stability. Vorn's voice was calm, almost kind. We are preserving peace for countless species across the galaxy. If a single human must be sacrificed to achieve that goal, it is a small price to pay. I'm not talking about me. Kira lifted her head and looked directly into Vorn's compound eyes. I'm talking about everything you're planning. All your schemes and controls and careful manipulations. You're making a mistake. Vorn's mandibles clicked again. You believe your species will somehow escape our measures? Our plans have been developed by the finest minds of 100 civilizations. Every possibility has been considered. Every variable has been accounted for, Kira said. Not every possibility. Not the most important one. And what would that be? Kira smiled. It was not a friendly expression. You're going to get caught. The chamber stirred. Whispers rippled through the assembled delegates. Vorn raised one armored arm to silence them. Caught, he repeated. By whom? Your government does not know you are here. Your people do not know this gathering exists. When you disappear, they will assume you died in an accident. A tragic loss, but not an unusual one, in the dangerous work of diplomacy. They'll figure it out. Kira's voice carried across the silent chamber. That's what you're really afraid of, isn't it? Not our ships, or our weapons, or our colonies. You're afraid of how we think. How we look at problems that should be impossible and refuse to accept that answer. She took a step forward, and the guards tensed. But Kira was not trying to escape. She was delivering a message. You've spent this entire gathering talking about what humanity has accomplished in 3 centuries. How we've grown faster than any species in history. How we've solved problems that stumped civilizations thousands of years older than us. And you think that's going to stop because you put a few obstacles in our path? Kira laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber, sharp and genuine. You know what humans do when someone tells us something is impossible? When someone says we can't have something or can't go somewhere or can't achieve our goals, we take it as a challenge. We work harder. We push further. We find ways that no one else ever thought of, because everyone else gave up too soon. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien eyes as she could. You're about to tell 8 billion humans that they have to stay small, that they have to be quiet and grateful and satisfied with whatever scraps you decide to give them. And you think they won't notice? You think they won't realize that their problems aren't natural? You think they won't start asking why every trade route leads nowhere and every scientific path hits a dead end? Kira shook her head slowly. High Chancellor, you have made the worst strategic mistake in galactic history. Because when humanity discovers what you've done, I promise you they will discover it. They won't just overcome your obstacles. They'll remember. They'll remember that the galaxy tried to cage them. And they'll make absolutely certain that no one ever has the power to do this to them again. The chamber was completely silent. Even the translators had stopped their constant humming. Vorn stared at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. You are brave, Ambassador. I will grant you that. But bravery cannot change reality. You are alone here. Your recording device has been confiscated and destroyed. No one will ever know what happened in this chamber. He turned to address the assembly. She will be detained indefinitely. The protocols will proceed as planned, and humanity will continue in peaceful ignorance of the measures taken for their own benefit. Guards moved forward to take Kira away. She did not resist. There was no point now, but as they led her toward the exit, she allowed herself one last look at the gathered delegates. Most of them looked satisfied. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked genuinely troubled by what they had witnessed, and one seat was empty. The Chitauri. Delegate was gone. Kira's heart leaped. The data crystal. She had dropped it in the maintenance tunnel, but she had not been alone in that area. The Chitauri were known for their small drone companions. Insect-like machines that could squeeze into spaces no larger creature could reach. If the Chitauri had found the crystal. Kira kept her face blank as the guards pushed her through the chamber doors. She did not smile. She did not show any sign of hope, but inside, she was burning with something that felt like victory. The recording was still out there. The truth was still alive. Humanity would know, and when they did, everything would change. Vorn thought he had won. He thought the humans were helpless. Their ambassador was just one woman alone against the power of the entire galaxy. But Kira knew something that Vorn had never understood. Humans were never really alone. They had each other. They had their stubbornness, their refusal to quit, their endless capacity to surprise everyone who underestimated them. The cage was being built, but humanity had never met a cage they couldn't break. The transmission reached Earth 3 days later. It came through every channel at once. Every screen on the planet, every display in every orbital station, every neural interface connected to the global network. There was no escaping it. No way to ignore what was being shown. Kira's recordings played in full. The debate, the proposals, the vote. Every word, every image. Every damning piece of evidence that showed how the galaxy had decided to cage humanity without their knowledge or consent for exactly 4 hours. Earth was silent. 8 billion people watched the truth unfold. They saw their supposed allies discussing how to cripple human economics. They heard the plans to sabotage human education. They witnessed the casual cruelty of species who smiled at human diplomats while plotting to limit human potential for generations to come. Then the silence ended. It did not end with speeches from politicians or statements from military leaders. It ended with action. Engineers who had been working on theoretical propulsion systems suddenly found their projects fully funded by mysterious donors. Universities that had closed their experimental physics programs reopened them overnight with new equipment appearing as if by magic. Manufacturing facilities across 100 colony worlds began changing their production lines, building things that had only existed on paper a week before. No one gave orders. No one coordinated from the top down. Humanity simply decided all at once that they would not accept the fate the galaxy had chosen for them. The Galactic Council demanded explanations. They received none. Ambassadors from a dozen species arrived on Earth to express concern and ask pointed questions. They were treated politely, given tours of cultural sites, served excellent food. But whenever they asked about the sudden surge in industrial activity, the sudden burst of scientific research, the sudden quiet determination that seemed to grip every human they met, they received only smiles and changes of subject. Humanity was done sharing its plans with species that had proven themselves untrustworthy. 18 months after the transmission, the first human ship crossed the galactic barrier. This was supposed to be impossible. Every species in the known galaxy agreed that the barrier could not be penetrated. The energy requirements were too high. The navigational challenges were too complex. The best minds of the oldest civilizations had tried and failed for millions of years. It took humanity 18 months. The ship that made the crossing was small, barely larger than a shuttle. Its crew of 5 sent back a simple message before disappearing into the unknown space beyond the barrier. Limit this. The message was received across the galaxy. No one knew how to respond. 3 years later, humanity unveiled the Cascade Drive. Every faster-than-light system used by galactic civilizations worked on the same basic principle. They bent space, folding the distance between 2 points so that ships could slip through the fold. It was elegant, efficient, and limited. There were places the folds could not reach. There were speeds that could not be exceeded. The Cascade Drive did not bend space. It simply ignored distance entirely. Travel times that had been measured in months were suddenly measured in hours. Human ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy almost instantly. The tactical implications were obvious. The strategic implications were terrifying. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Every species attended. Fear hung in the air like smoke, and for the first time in 300 years, humanity received an invitation. Ambassador Kira Vasquez walked into the chamber on her own feet. Her chains were gone. Her imprisonment was a memory. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, decorated with medals that represented achievements the galaxy had tried to prevent. The chamber was silent as she took her place at a podium that had been specially built for human use. She looked out at the assembly, at the thousands of aliens who had voted to cage her species, and she did not smile. High Chancellor Vorn sat in his usual place. He looked older somehow, his golden carapace dulled by years of stress and failure. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its former confidence. "Ambassador," he said, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I wish to express our deep regret for—" "Stop." Kira's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "You don't get to apologize. You don't get to explain. You get to listen." She activated her own holographic display. Star maps appeared in the air, but these were different from the ones Vorn had shown years before. They showed human vessels positioned at every major junction in the galaxy. Human stations in orbit around the most important worlds. Human technology integrated into systems that the elder races had considered beyond reach. "We could destroy you," Kira said simply. "Every species that voted against us. Every world that supported our containment. We have the capability. Some of my people think we would be justified." The chamber did not breathe. "But that's not who we are. That has never been who we are." Kira's voice softened slightly. "We didn't fight our way into space because we wanted to conquer. We did it because we wanted to explore, to discover, to become something greater than we were before." She looked around the room, and her expression changed. The anger was still there, but something else had joined it. Something that might have been hope. "You were afraid of us. I understand that now. We must seem like chaos to species who have had thousands of years to find their place in the universe. We change too fast. We adapt too quickly. We refuse to stay in any box you try to put us in." Kira smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "But here's what you never understood. We don't want your empires. We don't want your territories. We don't want to rule over species who lack the imagination to keep up with us. We want partners. We want civilizations that can grow alongside us, challenge us, help us become better than we could be alone." She deactivated her display and stepped back from the podium. "What you did was wrong. We will never forget it. But we can move past it if you're willing to try. You can spend the next 1,000 years watching us grow beyond anything you can imagine. Or you can join us. Learn from us. Let us learn from you. Build something together that none of us could build alone." Kira's final words echoed through the silent chamber. "You have 1 year to decide. Choose wisely." She turned and walked out without looking back. The Chitauri delegate was waiting in the corridor outside. The alien who had saved humanity by smuggling out Kira's recording? The one species that had stood against the tide of fear? "Do you think they'll accept?" the Chitauri asked. Kira considered the question. Behind her, she could already hear the sound of heated debate beginning. "Some will. Some won't, but that's fine." She smiled at her unexpected ally. "We're used to being underestimated. We're used to being told what we can't do. And we're very used to proving everyone wrong." The Chitauri's bioluminescent patches flickered, and what Kira had learned was a laugh. "Then I look forward to watching what you prove next." Together, they walked toward the docking bay where human ships waited. Ships that could cross galaxies in heartbeats. Ships that had been impossible 3 years before. Humanity had come to the stars looking for friends. Instead, they had found fear and betrayal. But fear could become respect. Betrayal could become partnership. And the universe, it turned out, was much bigger than any cage could hold. The galaxy had tried to limit humanity. Humanity had responded by becoming unlimited. And the best part was, they were just getting started.